Hi guys, it's Mrs. Smith here. I hope everybody's week has been good. And we're going to start our third lesson here, which we're looking at triangles. And the first thing we're going to do is look at ways that we can classify them. Okay, so very exciting classification of triangles. So the first way that we can look at classifying triangles is by their angles. So in this first triangle, it shows you that all three of these angles are less than 90 degrees, which means they're all acute angles, which makes it an acute triangle. Okay, in the second triangle, we have one right angle, so it's going to be classified as a right angle. And in the third triangle here, we have one angle that's larger than 90 degrees, which makes it an obtuse angle. So it's going to be classified as an obtuse triangle. So when you're classifying triangles by their angles, triangles always have two acute angles. So you're really looking at that third angle, and that gives you the classification. The other way that we can classify triangles would be by their side lengths. Okay, so this first example, there's no markings on the sides, and if there's no markings, that means that all of the sides would be different measurements. So this would be classified as a scalene triangle because none of the sides are equal. In the second triangle here, if you see these two dashes on the lines, that means that these two sides are congruent to each other, which that means they're equal. So if you have two equal sides or two congruent sides, that gives you an isosceles triangle. And in the third triangle, if you look at this one, it has these hash marks on all three of the sides, which means that all three of the sides are equal or congruent. So that gives you an equilateral triangle. Okay, so the other thing that you need to make sure you know when we're classifying triangles and writing information about triangles is some of the notation. So if you look at this symbol, you always want to put a little triangle in front of the triangle that you're naming. So for example, if I was talking about triangle ABC, I would need to put that little triangle marking in front of it. Because another thing that we could classify with three letters would be an angle. Okay, so if you look at this example here, what it's basically telling us is that if you add up all the angles in a triangle, you're going to get a sum of 180 degrees. Okay, so this first example says draw a triangle with three acute angles and two congruent sides, and then we need to classify the triangle. So if it has three acute angles, we're going to draw our triangle, and we're going to say that all of these angles are acute, which makes it an acute triangle. Okay, so if all the angles are less than 90 degrees, it would be an acute triangle. And now they're saying there's also two congruent sides. So we're going to say this side is congruent to this side, so we're going to put those little marks on the sides. And if we have two sides that are congruent, it's going to be an isosceles triangle. Okay, so this first classification, acute triangle, is classification by the angle. And the second classification here, isosceles, is classification by the side length. Okay, so the next example, draw a triangle with one obtuse angle and no congruent sides. And then we need to classify it. So again, if we want an obtuse angle, we're going to just change our triangle here. And these two angles are acute. And this one's obtuse. Okay, so remember that two angles of a triangle are always acute. So you're really classifying it by that third angle. So because this third angle, and I'm going to actually draw that a little bit better. Okay, but because that third angle is obtuse, it makes it an obtuse triangle. Okay, and now they also want the classification by side length. So none of the sides are congruent, so we're going to put no markings on the sides, which means they're all different lengths. And if none of the sides are congruent, it's going to be a scalene triangle. Okay, so again, obtuse would be the classification by angle, and scalene would be the classification by side length. All right, so in those ones, we had to draw the triangles. Okay, here they're giving you a picture and they're asking you to classify the triangle again by its angles and its side lengths. So in this first one, if you look at the tick marks on the sides, that means that if it has these two tick marks, these two sides are congruent to each other. So we know if two sides are congruent or equal, it gives us an isosceles triangle. Okay, it also says classify it by its angle. So again, in this triangle, we have all angles that are less than 90 degrees. So this would be an acute triangle. All right, and then this next one is classify it by side length. Again, there's no markings on the sides. So if there's no markings on the sides, we know that they're not congruent, they're not equal. So this would be a scalene triangle. Okay, and classification by angle, it gives us that right angle there. So this is going to be a right triangle. Okay, so now it's also telling us you can write and solve an equation to find the missing angle measurements of a triangle. So this is what we talked about in the beginning, that we know that all of the angles of a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. So if I know that this angle Y is 119 degrees, I know angle X is 43 degrees. I'm going to add those together and get 162 degrees, which means if there's only a total of 180 degrees, I'm going to subtract what I already have. So I know that angle Z is going to be 18 degrees. So I'm going to write that correctly using correct notation here. So remember, this means the measurement of angle Z. Oopsie, I'm going to rewrite that so it doesn't look like a 2. Okay, is equal to 18 degrees. Okay, and I'm actually going to use this, and it says write and solve an equation. So if we wanted to write this as an equation, which it wants us to do here, what we would do is say 119 plus 43 degrees plus angle Z, right, which we don't know what it is equal to 180. So then you would show your steps here. 162 plus Z is equal to 180. And then we would just do the subtraction like we did above. Okay, and I know that a lot of you probably tend to do it this first way, but if they want you to write an equation, this is how you would set up an equation here. Okay, the next example says write and solve an equation to find the value of x. So again, we do need to solve or write and solve an equation. So we're going to add up all of the angles that we have here. So we have x, and we have 2x, and then we know that this is a 90-degree angle, so plus 90. And we know that all of that needs to sum to 180 degrees. So we're going to combine our like terms to get 3x plus 90 equals 180. And then we're going to subtract 90 from both sides to get 3x is equal to 90. So when we divide by 3 here, we're going to get x is equal to 30. Okay. You can also plug your answer back in to double check it. So if I were to plug this back in, this would give me 30 degrees and 60 degrees. So now 30 and 60 is 90, plus another 90 gives me that 180. So you can always double check your work. All right, so the last example here is saying if triangle ABC, if the measurement of angle A is 25 degrees, the measurement of angle B is 108, what is the measurement of angle C? And again, they're saying be sure to write and solve an equation and show all of your work. Okay, So to put this in an equation, we're going to say angle A, which is 25 degrees, plus angle B, which is 108 degrees, plus angle C, which we don't know, all should sum to 180 degrees. Okay, so we're going to combine this here to get 137. Okay, and is that not right? Just kidding. 125, 28, 20, 31, 33, 133. Okay, plus C is equal to 180. Okay, so now I would want to subtract that from both sides. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 133. And when I do 180 minus 133, that should give me 47 degrees. Okay, and again, if you want to just double check that, you can always just add those all up and make sure that it would sum to 180 degrees. Okay, so that's looking at classifications of triangle and also how to find missing angle measures in triangles.